and welcome to God and Film, the podcast where an atheist and a Christian get to get.
You had one job.
I had one job. We'll take it again. Hello, and welcome to God and Film, the podcast where an atheist and a Christian get together to discuss the best that cinema has to offer, to see if we can find parallels to the Gospel or any other Bible stories. I'm librarian and yawning portal regular, Julia Hall.
And I'm filmmaker and Candlekeep archivist, Giles Goff.
And today on Giles's lockdown project that got out of hand, we're going to be looking at the 2023 Dungeons & Dragons film, Honor Amongst Thieves. Set in the official Dungeons & Dragons realm of Faerun, in which a ragtag band of good-hearted ruffians, Edgin, Helga, Simon and Doric, scupper the plans of a former friend and ne'er-do-well Forge and his evil wizard accomplice, Sophia. We're going to be taking a look at what D&D entails, its current reputation in the hobby world today, and asking ourselves the question, can Christians play Dungeons & Dragons? Giles, what did you think of the film?
I really had a great time with this film. I am very conscious that I am in somebody else's fandom here. So I am wiping my feet, I'm taking my shoes off, I'm being very respectful. I want you to also know that I am taking a lot on faith here. So I don't know whether a Candlekeep archivist is like a massive nerd or the coolest thing that anyone could ever possibly be.
I mean, it is both.
Good. Yeah. Well,
It's
that
both.
that is my sweet spot. That is my wheelhouse.
No, I'm really interested to see what somebody who doesn't play D&D, so someone who doesn't have the fallback of, oh, that's a gelatinous cube, or oh, I know that spell, as a genuine, straight story. I'm really interested to see what you thought of it in that perspective.
So I enjoyed it. I think for me, the unfortunate thing was I was very conscious that I was watching it in the wrong setting. So normally I set whatever we're going to watch and I'll watch it in whatever format feels right. If it's a TV show, I'll watch it as a TV show. And if it's a film, often I'll have seen it at the cinema myself. This is the one where you've picked it and I'm just watching it for research. Basically, this is where I get to be you for a week. And I was very conscious that this film would have gone down a storm in a packed Friday night cinema screening, whereas when you're watching it rented on Amazon Prime on a Friday morning, whilst also trying to do some work inside, you're not really experiencing it the way it's meant to be experienced. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So I liked it. I enjoyed it. I don't think I could ever hope to enjoy it as much as other people.
Yeah, I think as a basic story, it's not quite something to write home about, but it actually stands up as a story on itself without relying too heavily on
Hmm.
Easter eggs and callbacks and little things just for the D&D players.
So you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but the thing it reminded me of is when computer games get adapted into films. What I felt was it was fun. It was a good, enjoyable romp. It was
Mm,
quite shallow in it felt like
yes.
sort of puddle deep in its depth and your attachment to the characters. And this is, and again, I might be showing my own prejudice here, but American accents in a fantasy setting, it like an old world fantasy setting,
Yeah.
I don't know how you get past that.
It's weird because especially I think if you've come into D&D in a certain way, like dwarves are always Scottish. Don't know why. Don't know why, but dwarves always are Scottish.
Yeah.
Um, Hobbits, I mean, to be fair, this is also partly Peter Jackson's fault. Hobbits always talk with that sort of farmer,
West Country
no,
accent.
oh, Mr.
I'm
Frodo sort
Mr.
of,
Frodo.
that's a Mr. Frodo. It does feel a bit like a lot of races kind of get boxed into certain accents, but there's
Mhm.
something weird about American accents in
Like, I get
fandom.
it. The American accent must have come from somewhere, and if you trace back through the Jacobean roots and so on and so forth, you
Mm.
must find somebody who sounded a bit like that at some point, but still.
But I'm sorry, Americans' fantasies for the English. I
Yeah,
think it
yeah.
just
You get the sci-fi.
you know the sci-fi, we'll take the fantasy and the robes and the long hair and reinforced loots. So I believe, Giles, you have some facts for me, which I'm again very interested to see what you've managed to like squirrel out of the internet for this one.
I've got a few. I'm now finally realizing what it's like when you have to try and find these facts and try to impress somebody. So Chris Pine agreed to appear because the role of Edgin, right?
Edgin,
Edgin.
it's really weird. It's a weird name.
Chris Pine agreed to appear because the role of Edgin is very atypical for a fantasy film leading man, and because he sat in on his nephew playing a D&D campaign and saw how much fun he and his friends were having. Of that.
That's cool.
It tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of Viggo Mortensen taking the role of Aragorn because his son was like, "You know who Aragorn? They're offering you this." Like, I love anything where sort of people get convinced to do a role
Mm.
because it would either impress their kids or impress their nephews. I'm
Yeah,
always
I
here for
feel
that.
there's a few instances where that's occurred, and
Mhm.
there is no Aragorn other than Viggo Mortensen,
Yeah, it is what it is,
as
yeah.
far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah. All the spells used in the film, while largely unnamed, are all spells used in the Dungeons& and Dragons tabletop RPG. And the one that jumped out to me was the use of the hither, thither.
Hither to
Um,
the staff, yes.
yes. And the thing I loved about that was you could see how people playing the game could think something through. The
Yeah.
way that you've got to put the portal, it's got to be behind the picture, whether I'm going to put the picture in something. And just the way I love a good heist movie. And I like how can I put this? They kind of make fun of their own tropes, like, "Oh, just use
Yeah,
magic. Magic will take care of it. Do some magic." And he's like, "Guys, I'm not very good at that." It's like, "No, you just magic it out, you know?" And the way you can take the magic and you can take the world around you and use it like that. I love that. I thought that was brilliant.
yeah, it really it always feels to me with things like that, and also at the beginning with the Jonathan plan,
Mhm.
I absolutely can see the DM sat there about to declare that, yes, your pardon's been accepted, and the bunch of players who have all become massively paranoid that they're not gonna get out basically come up with this harebrained scheme on the fly, literally on the fly. It really does feel like you get little insights to sort of the meta beyond what's going on.
So a lot of these facts will be me saying things and then giving you a quizzical look as I'm like, Does that make a sense to you?" So, for example, this one, the film is set in the Forgotten Realms campaign
Yes.
setting of Dungeons and Dragons. So, what is that?
So when D&D came out way
Hmm.
back in the day, it didn't come out in just one area.
Okay.
So you have Forgotten Realms is its own world in itself. It has its own geography, the places on the map, so places like Baldur's Gate and Waterdeep and Neverwinter.
When I saw Baldur's Gate, I was like, it was I became the Captain America meme of, I know that reference.
Yes. But they also did other realms basically. So Dragonlance is one, Greyhawk is one. Those ones I've not visited, so to speak. So I know a little bit less about them, but there are different. Think of them like different planes, I guess, of almost of existence. So a lot of them have different flavors. So Greyhawk is a little bit more almost like a fantasy noir kind
Okay.
of feel. So it's a lot of factions and political intrigue. Fey
Mm.
is your classic sword and board adventurers going out to go do things. Dragonlance, I think, has more dragons than usual, but that also has a chivalry knights kind of feel. So
Okay.
a lot of them tend to lean into more specific types of fantasy and fantasy
Mm.
role.
I did feel when I was watching it at one point that this is about as far away from Game of Thrones as you could possibly get while staying in the same genre.
Yeah, yeah, it's I mean, nobody dies actually. Well, nobody important dies.
What Yeah.
Forget
The
those
the wife
Waterdeep.
gets fridged early on.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is a bit disappointing. The
Mhm.
fridged wife.
We'd have to see whether it passes the Bechdel test as well. I don't
Ooh,
think it does.
ooh, because my gut feeling was, oh, but Helga and Kira talk to each other all the time. But
Do they ever talk about something
I
that
think
isn't?
they end up talking about Edgin a lot as a dad figure,
Mhm.
so I might have to go back and look now. But they'll test it's great, they'll test, it's fine. I
By the
think
way, Jonathan Goldstein, who is one of the directors, said, "Ours is a movie that doesn't take itself with great seriousness, but it's never a spoof. It honors the world of D&D and celebrates it, but hopefully it gives the audience an engaging and fun ride." And I guess my question to you is, how did you feel watching this film? Were you kind of watching it between your fingers, or did you go, "Yeah, that tracks"?
my first instinct was I really wanted to enjoy it, and I was really scared that what
Mm.
they would do was present a very, very poor story and a very poor script held together with, "Look, look, look, it's this NPC that you like," or "Look, look, it's this monster that's really famous that you like," and, "Ooh, ooh, here's bits from the game that"
Mhm.
to basically kinda lead you in a little Easter egg, "Ooh, a piece of candy," kind of through the film, so that you then think it's better than it is. But
Right.
actually, and again, it's not massively deep in terms of, character development and fighting against certain fantasy tropes, but the story tracks. They've thought about it, they've put the effort in, they've
Mhm.
made a film that is good
Yeah,
and didn't rely solely on waving shiny things at me,
yeah.
which I really appreciated. And I did, when I watched it in the cinema, I did genuinely really enjoy myself.
I'm so glad. I'm so happy you had such a good time with this film because it's a good film. It's an enjoyable film. It's not it's not made for me, and that's okay. Some things aren't, you know. And as a white straight man, many of us get confused by that concept. But I can I quite like it sometimes when I can go, okay, this thing is not for me, and that's okay, you know.
Yeah.
John Francis Daly, one of the other directors, highlighted that the heist genre is familiar to the audience, which provides the framework for the uninitiated, so that's me, so
Mm,
that they understand what our characters are setting out to do without it being overwhelmed by lore or proper nouns.
yeah.
Daly also wanted the film to be accessible for those unfamiliar with the fantasy genre. He said, since the basis of most tabletop campaigns is a group of strangers coming together to complete a job, the thematic parallels between heist movies and the fantasy role playing campaigns offered a shared language for newcomers. And in our Star Trek episode, you talked about a trope that you could eat up with a spoon. And for me, one that I always enjoy is the putting the band back together trope,
Yeah.
originating from like Blues Brothers, where you go off, you find that somebody says to their sort of second in command or their best friend, "Well, we need blah blah blah," and they'll say, "Oh, not blah blah blah. What's blah 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 doing now? Oh, well, you should see." And then you go off and then you see what they do. I Give me that all day, every day, 24/7, 365, 66 in a leap year, because that's that is one of those tropes that I just adore.
Yeah, there is a meme amongst the community that, like, every session 1 is you guys meet in a tavern because you've got a job to do. You sit in a tavern, and that's where you meet, and you've been given something to do. I think linking that to a high genre is really, really clever.
Yeah.
And yeah, it works, it absolutely works.
My last fact, and one of the few times where I watched this film, I went, "Ooh," was the characters from the television cartoon Dungeons and Dragons from 1983 make an appearance during the High Sun Games. All six characters are visible from a distance at the start of the games. They're partially blocked by the main characters when they run into the maze. Inside the maze, Holger spots another team, excited that they found a chest, and she stops to watch. Hank the ranger opens the chest, and Bobby the barbarian takes the axe. Sheila the thief and Diana the acrobat are standing beside them. And when the group leaves, you can just make out Eric the cavalier's head behind Presto the magician's signature hat. This same group is in the safe cage at the end of the round, where you get a good look at Eric the cavalier. And this was one of those things where for me, it was like just on the edge of my knowledge, is just on the absolute periphery, because
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the cartoon, but I'm sure I've seen it at some point or other. And you just look and go, is that, is that, is that a great? It was so conspicuous that I thought this must be a
Mm,
thing.
because their outfits are very, like,
Primary colors.
cartoonish
Yeah.
almost as well. Everyone else has that more integrated fantasy feel, and then, like, the barbarians literally in, like, a little crisscross, leather strap for a
Yeah.
shirt and his little horn helmet. It's adorable.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. So there you go. Those are my facts.
Those are awesome. Thank you, Giles. So, our special guest this week is someone who, as far as I'm concerned, is kind of like living the dream. I've had the privilege of actually sharing a table with him in the past, and I'm super excited to have him on the podcast today. But I'll let him introduce himself.
So I'm Rob. I'm from Rolldark. I'm the founder of Rolldark Game Master Agency. We're an agency where you can hire professional dungeon masters anywhere in the UK, pretty much at the moment. The reason I started Rolldark was because I noticed that there was a bit of a gap in the market. I used to live in London about 4 years ago. I was living in London, and I really got into D&D when my twin brother and I ended up living together. We both basically separated from our girlfriends at the same time, got a flat together, and were just bored one night and thought, oh, let's just like check out a gaming club and play like some Dungeons and Dragons, like give that a go. Like, yeah, okay, let's go give it a go. And we went down there, and the DM that ran the game, although it was very nice, was just like you walk into a room and there's a monster, and he looks at you and he goes, Rah. And we were just like, right. And myself and my brother are both professional actors by trade, so whenever we've sort of played D&D, we like would throw ourselves into it, like, you know, full on characters, silly voices, we'd go for it. So to be sat at a table with a guy who just wasn't that invested felt really lackluster. That kind of gave me an idea, and I thought, well, I wonder if people would be prepared to pay for dungeon masters that were pro actors.
Mhm.
And from that, Rolldark was born. I basically started doing pubs where I was running games. Then I started hiring other guys to come and join with us, and yeah, and it's just got sort of grown from strength to strength from there. So yeah, really, really cool.
Fantastic. So
But yeah.
you've seen quite a lot of the D&D community and how it's sort of changed, really. How much would you say that it's kind of evolved over the past sort of decade or so that you've kind of been playing?
Well, I think it speaks a lot to geek culture in the sense that you nowadays, I mean, I don't spend much time in secondary schools, but I suspect geeks are no longer the nerdy kids that get picked on. I think they're probably
They
now a
they've had
bit
a bit of
more
a
cool.
revival.
Yeah, they're a bit
Yeah.
more they're bit more of the cool kids, you know? Like if you're sort of like someone who understands programming languages, then chances are you're going to go on and have a fantastic career
Mm,
when you leave school because they pay big bucks and they're in huge demand. Geeks have never had it so good. I think with Dungeons and Dragons, the main sort of changes I've seen is how the community has opened up to people who wouldn't necessarily you would consider to be
mm,
people that would play Dungeons and Dragons. So, for example, I've got a group of guys that are all stockbrokers in London that play every other month, and they are the sweetest, nicest guys ever. If you were to meet them, like I did initially, and you get introduced to them, you think, crikey, these guys are very formal. They're very like, together and very smart and well spoken. And, they've got their wives and their children and they sit down and they say, hello, how are you? La, la, la. And I was like, Christ, these guys are like really serious. This is going to be a really difficult game. And I sat down, and as soon as the penny sort of dropped when they realized that they are playing make believe, they all just transcended into children again and realized that, wow, this game is great. And I think that that's the beauty of it. I think what's happened is Dungeons and Dragons has it's appealed to a large audience because it's so creative. I think the pandemic certainly helped with that in terms
yeah.
of like people playing online, people not knowing what to do with their time. Oh, you can play Dungeons and Dragons online. That's a really good way to pass the hours. You can meet up with all your friends or your family and have a lovely little romp through the fantasy countryside and kill some dragons. It's like, oh, okay, great. But because of the game, because it's role play, it's so creative, and you don't have to necessarily be creative to play it. You can just want
Mm,
to play it because you want to get loot, or you want to just have a little jolly down a dungeon or whatever. Or you can play it from a completely different perspective, where let's say, for example, you're battling with identity and you want to explore a safe space where you can do that. Like we've
yeah.
had numerous players that are male that have played female characters and vice versa, for various different personal reasons. It's great for that. It's great to explore ideas. It's great to interact with other people and who have other ideas. But I think the main pull is the collaborative element of D&D, the fact that there is no one winner in the group.
Mm,
And failure is always exciting and fun if
yeah.
you lean into it in the right way. If you lean into it the wrong way, then you can be a bit, and you can let things get to you. It's no different to any kind of sport in that respect. If you're too competitive, then you're not going to have a fun time.
Yeah.
But if you're someone who just leans into it, that's open, that wants to have the experience, then you'll be set. You'll be pretty much set to have a great time.
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits really to playing the game from a sort of an emotional and social perspective, right?
Oh yeah, totally, absolutely. I think it's benefited so many people. I mean, we have, when we do our risk assessments for venues for Rolldark Fest and the other events that we do. One of the key things we always have to take into account is the amount of autistic players that we have,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, exactly, and how and their individual needs, because
Yeah.
anyone that's neurodivergent will have a different set of needs that we need to address. So, for
Mm.
example, in our venue in Salisbury, we had tables fairly close together, and that caused a number of audible issues.
Mm.
And there was a few of our players on those tables who were autistic that just could not cope with that. At the time we first did it, we never took that into account. We just didn't realize. But through doing that event, through having the feedback, now we know that's what we need to do. We need to have open spaces, as much distance from tables as possible. We need to make sure the acoustics are good. Yeah, it's a massive learning curve, and it attracts so many different people. It's fantastic.
Yeah, having run Dungeons and Dragons at schools, the amount of neurodivergent people who really find solace in the game feels like a like exponential number. I think if you're
Yeah.
the one person in your D&D group who thinks that you're neurotypical, maybe check again because it's very
Yeah,
likely.
right.
So for me, Dungeons and Dragons is always about like the storytelling, right? That
Mm.
as you say, there's no winners, there's no losers. Leaning into failure sometimes creates the best stories, right? So do you have a favorite story, a peak moment from one of your tables that you'd like to share?
Yeah, okay. So I would probably say, well, I ran a game for a group of guys. They're all friends. They all went to the same school together, and they all used to meet up once a year to have like a bit of a shindig with each other, and they'd hire out an Airbnb and just get drunk and spend some time away from their families or whatnot, just to kind of have a bit of a reset, I guess. And I got hired to run a game for them. And when I went in there, I quickly realized that I was dealing with not just beginners, but also people that would never in a million years touch a game like this.
Mm,
And it was obviously just like, a random, oh, let's just do this kind of situation.
yeah.
And when I sat down with them, I realized that they were doing that classic thing where, if you don't know if you've played Skyrim or any of the Elder Scroll games
Mm,
or Witcher 3, where you can pick up items, you can pick up anything that's anything
yeah.
knocking around and just
I'm
and just
always
look
over
at it.
encumbered in Skyrim, always. I
Yeah,
can never move
every
anywhere.
company. Exactly. Well, this is what they were doing. They were basically going, "Oh, I'm going to investigate." As soon as they knew that they could investigate stuff,
Mm,
that was then all they wanted to do, was just roll investigation checks. I'm going to look behind this picture to see if there's anything there, and da-da-da-da. And one of them decided to look into this. They found like a storage room that contained loads of barrels, and I made them roll a Constitution saving throw because there was a horrendous smell coming from the barrels. Anyway, he passed the Constitution saving throw, and then continued to the barrels to inspect. And I was like, okay. And he got a nat one. And I was like, you've just discovered barrels filled with liquid poo. And he was like,
amazing.
right, right. And then I had to like build a story around the fact that there was this like basement with loads of barrels filled with liquid poo everywhere. And it just got really ridiculous. But the guy in question, he was playing a wizard. And at the end of our first session, he told me, he's like, Rob, I just wanted to know, I'm actually a magician, in real life, and I do like various different shows and stuff up and down the country. He said, and that was the very first time I felt like I was performing real magic. And I was like,
Oh wow,
oh, that's
that's such a
nice.
compliment.
Yeah, I
Wow,
was like, I
that's
was
such
like, cool. Because things got quite heated with them. They were
yeah.
fighting this necromancer, and it was very like quite intense. And he had to
Mm.
like think strategically based on the spells that he had. He had a good read of his spells during our break, so he can get an idea of what and how he could implement them into his strategy. And yeah, he really kind of leaned into it, and I felt really chuffed afterwards. I was like, oh, that's so nice that he would
Yeah,
say
that's
that.
amazing.
Yeah, really cool, really cool.
Awesome. It's been so good to have you on the show and just to have a little chat. Before I let you leave though, have you got any last kind of cheeky plugs that you want to pop in and let us know
Oh,
about?
well, we've got Rolldark Fest coming up in on the 9th of November in Clacton on Sea. It's in a place called Wheelie, I believe, a little village called Wheelie, just outside Clacton, which should be cool. There's gonna be Call of Cthulhu tables and Dungeons and Dragons tables. It's set in
Very
the
spooky.
1970s. Yeah, it's set in the 1970s, so it's going to be quite funny, sort of tongue-in-cheek horror, sort of Cthulhu-esque type stuff. But we've got Dungeons and Dragons, which will be like your typical sort of Dungeons and Dragons tables. We'll have the old rules and the new rules. We've still got seats available for it. If you want to find out where you can get tickets, if you go to the Rolldark website, which is www.rolldark.co.uk, there should be like a banner, either pop up or come up and say, oh, hey, this is our event, or there might be a thing across the top that you click. If not, just go to services, click live events, and you'll find it there.
Fantastic. Amazing. Thank you so much.
No problemo.
So, Giles, what do you think?
I have to say, the main emotion I had listening to that was this profound sense of pride. Hearing you interview somebody and using some of the techniques that I use, I was like,
It was a bit scary, I'm not going to lie.
my girl's all grown up.
Rob was a really good sport.
It was
So,
brilliant. And I have to thank you as well, because for the first time ever, I got to listen to a bit of a God in Film episode as a fan. I got to listen to something going, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next, what they're going to talk about. And I was driving along, listening to this interview, getting completely caught up and listening to it, thinking, that's really interesting. That's fascinating. Rob was of such a brilliant sport. It was great to just listen to.
he's
And
got
I
great
think
stories as well.
amazing stories. And I think the thing I liked was that sense of when you go to something, and if you've got an acting background, I have not worked as a professional actor for quite some time. I hung up my equity card a long time ago. And yet, you still, when you go to something, you see a performer and you think, is that the best you could do? Really? So I can definitely relate to that. I loved some of the things he talked about with how some people will use it as an opportunity to test out a different gender identity.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
thought that was so clever. That's never
Yeah.
occurred to me before. And the talk about the amount of neurodivergent people playing
Yeah.
D&D.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Now, there were some things where I was just laughing along and going, I truly hope this makes sense at some point later on. Because there was that thing you were talking about where there's people going in and finding the barrels of liquid sewage and liquid
Yeah.
poo.
Yeah.
There was talk about I, I rolled a constitution roll and I
Yes.
got a
Yeah.
nat one,
So
and I
I'll translate this for
yes,
like
please,
for
for the
the
noobs.
for the uninitiated. Essentially, he goes into this room. It's filled with barrels of liquid sewage, and he rolls a roll in order to try not to throw up.
Right.
A Constitution saving throw
Oh,
is
as in your
your
own
physical
constitution. I
constitution. So it
see.
might be to resist being poisoned, or in this case, resist fecal matter.
Mhm.
And when we say a nat one, it means that the roll on the dice was a one, which in Dungeons and Dragons means a failure always. You
Yeah.
could have the biggest number to add to it, you could end up with, a 15 or something silly. But if you roll a one naturally, that is always a fail.
Okay.
So it sounds like this guy probably did throw up.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. That was a great interview to listen to.
Awesome. So I think now it's time for finding a faith in the film.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Woo!
See, I know you've
So
changed it, and I respect that. That's your thing. But this is my way of honoring Phil in my heart. I
we love
can't
you,
quite
Phil.
let go of that. Yeah.
We miss you.
Yeah. Shout out
Um,
to Phil. Pull one out for Phil.
one thing I did want to just sneaky mention before we get on to the sort of the real meat of the finding faith in the film. Obviously in Dungeons and Dragons, we have the character Simon Omar, who is a sorcerer, or Simon the Sorcerer, and of course there is a Simon the Sorcerer in the Bible, although they're not completely the same.
Hang on. Is he in the Book of Acts?
He is.
Yes.
Book of Acts, chapter 8 and 9, something like
Right.
that.
Okay. As in we're
Um,
well past this first series of Testaments, so we've no idea what's
yeah,
going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So spoilers if you're catching up on Acts and
Yeah. Book of
Testament.
Acts. First bit of Book of Acts is putting the band together. And then and then the later bit is going out on the road.
Both Simons kind of start off as a bit unscrupulous. Simon Omar is using his magic to rob people essentially by distracting them. And of course, Simon Magus, Simon the sorcerer in the Bible, is a sorcerer, which in the Bible is a bad thing to be, full stop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's not great.
And although Simon Magus does get baptized, he doesn't really understand the gift of the Holy Spirit. He doesn't get it. He offers money to Peter in return for gaining the gift to give the Holy Spirit. And Peter tells him quite politely, honestly, to keep his money because what the power of God cannot be bought. So Simon Magus ultimately kind of fails to improve himself in any way. Whereas Simon Omar in the film, he goes on an adventure, he says Neverwinter, he learns to be a more confident person, and he gets a second chance at a date with Doric. So
He gets a shiny ass helmet as well.
he
It looks
he does get a
pretty
shiny ass
cool.
helmet. But that was just a fun little kind of,
Yeah, I think
little
the
appetizer before the main course.
the funny thing about the early church, and it's often held up as being this almost idealized way of the way Christians should be, everyone sharing things, everyone being focused on the rest of it. But you have to remember, early Christians didn't have the New Testament to read. Effectively, almost all of the epistles is Paul or John or Peter writing to a church going, look, no, we can't do, no, you can't do that. No, you can't worship Jesus and go to the temple of Artemis. It's it, all of them just explain. No, it's not. It's the Holy Spirit. It's not a magic trick, and this is that kind of vibe.
Honestly, it does sound like teaching Dungeons and Dragons to people who've never played it before, who don't, who they got the spirit, but they don't really understand how it works. Like,
Okay.
no, you can't punch people with your mage hand. It cannot do violence, which is something that I had to say quite often.
Juliet,
Um,
promise me at some point that you're gonna get me in for at least like a one shot
oh yeah,
of a
we'll
of a
get it.
D&D campaign
We'll
because
get Mrs. Goffin.
yeah, oh, she would be so down for that. This is one of the things I need to tick off my bucket list, you know?
Yeah, I can hook you up. I can get you the good stuff. But speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, so when it first came out, it did happen to coincide with a period in the 80s and 90s called the Satanic Panic. Now, you and Phil have talked all about that on your episode on the Omen.
Yeah.
So if you want to know about the Satanic Panic, go there because I ain't going to talk about it. We already did it. The too long didn't read is that it was a period of like heightened paranoia in America and the UK. High profile suicide cases like James Das Egbert and James Pulling fueled a lot of anti D&D material. So you had the citizens group bothered about Dungeons and Dragons. Which, if you remember that one episode of Buffy where Joyce starts that mothers opposed to the occult,
Moo.
it's that.
Answer
It's
to
that.
moo. Yeah.
We even have the very famous anti D&D film Mazes and Monsters, which stars a very young Tom Hanks when he was like basically unknown. So it starts up from a pretty bad reputation. But if we fast forward to today, you've got prominent D&D players from internet shows like Critical Role and Dimension 20 enjoying a rock star like status. They do sell out live shows at places like Madison Square and Edinburgh Castle. Dice sales are through the roof. You can find rule books and accessories in all sorts of mainstream bookshops. Countless YouTube channels dedicated to, DM tips, player tips, world building exercises, role play practice, parody songs, skits. It's featured in Stranger Things,
I
and
was going to ask actually,
yeah,
how much of D&D's current success do you think could be put down to Stranger Things?
Mm, I maybe like 50%.
Okay.
Because like Critical Role, which was a live stream D&D show. So basically a group of nerdy ass voice actors, as the intro goes, streamed their D&D game. That started about 10 years ago, and that slowly became to be a very big high production. It's
Yeah.
basically a TV show. I think that specifically really helped. Having it in Stranger Things kind of opened the door for people who weren't in the board game community kind of already.
I think that's probably my way in, effectively, because
Yeah.
you've got Joseph Quinn playing Eddie Munson, and he is cool as hell. You've
Mhm.
got the T-shirt is the Hellfire Club,
Yes.
and of course, if you're a dyed-in-the-wall X-Men fan like I am, Hellfire Club has a level of significance in that area. So it was they definitely sweetened the pill of getting into Dungeons
Yeah,
and Dragons for me from
that
that angle.
very much piqued a lot in interest in a lot of people.
In fact, there was something that our guest talked about, like a Cthulhu board or a
Yes,
Cthulhu
so
game set in the 70s.
yeah, so Dungeons and Dragons isn't the only tabletop role playing game. I like to this is going to sound really bad. I kind of compare D&D to like the gateway drug of tabletop role play.
Gotcha.
It's the one that is most accessible. There's loads of stuff on it. It's a really easy system to learn, but it
Okay.
is not the only one by a long stretch.
Okay.
There's Star Trek, there's Star Wars,
Wait,
Call of
hold on.
Cthulhu,
Hold
Doctor Who, G.I.
the
Joe,
hell
Power
on.
Rangers.
How am I learning this just now?
There's all sorts of worlds.
Okay.
Some of them are linked to the D&D system, so how
So
they roll the dice. Some of them are completely independent. Basically, if you can think of it, there's probably a role-playing game somewhere for it. You can get solo role-playing games that are intended to play alone. You can get ones that are intended to play, as a group, ones that are for two people. The market is huge for all these different kinds of role-playing games. But D&D, I think, is the most popular and the most kind of well-known in
Yeah.
general as it is now. And with the rep that it has now, unless one, I think you were there, Gandalf, 3,000 years ago during the panic, or if you've watched Stranger Things kind of all the way through, where they do sort of touch on it a little bit in that season, you wouldn't think that D&D had such a bad rep that was literally forcing it underground. So why is it that even now we're still getting videos on YouTube, albeit in a lot less quantity than the sort of pro D&D ones, that warn against the dangers of Dungeons and Dragons? Not many people, unless you were like there, or you've watched that season of Stranger Things, you wouldn't really think that it's had such a cripplingly bad rep. So why is it that even now we're seeing some material from Christians against the dangers of Dungeons and Dragons, and various kind of forum boards awash with the question, I'm Christian, can I play Dungeons and Dragons?
Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our show. Thank you
Yep.
so much for joining us today. We
was
hope
me.
you'll join us for our Christmas. Wouldn't it be so lovely if it was that simple?
It would be. To try and answer this question, I'm gonna yap a little bit about what D&D is, the sort of the mechanics of it, so that we can kind of understand maybe why people might feel this way.
Yeah.
So in role-playing games, you take on the role of your character. So you build them from scratch. You craft their backstory, you craft their history, what they look like, their personality, and then when you play the game, you embody all of the elements that you've chosen. So you speak with their voice, you make the choices that they would make, and you just generally inhabit them for like an hour or three. Kind of like if you were acting a character in a play. It's very much the same thing. It's like a very long improv play that can go on for like years. As well as this, you also choose things like their species, so if they're going to be a tiefling or a half elf or a human, and also their class. So their class is kind of like their job. So Helga is a barbarian or a fighter, I believe. Edgin is a bard, so someone who uses kind of charm and music as part of their thing. Simon is a sorcerer, and Doric is a druid, things like that.
Okay, can we talk about something?
hmm
What's the distinction between sorcerer and druid?
So I'm glad that you asked that question, because most classes in D&D can cast spells, but how they do that is different. So sorcerers are born innately with the power to be able to do magic.
Okay.
Druids use sort of the power of nature to kind of so their magic comes from natural powers. If you're a wizard like Saztam or Sophia, you have to study for a really, really long time. You get your power from books.
One of the things that got me was when Safina has that conversation with her boss, as Tam, and he's kind of in the shadows,
Yeah.
and it's genuinely quite
It's
creepy,
creepy,
you
yeah.
know?
So,
Wow.
Saztan basically gets his power from reading a lot of books.
Okay.
So basically, it's like the difference between a sorcerer and a wizard is, that one kid in your class who will just like get it straight away. They'd be
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, man, I can do quadratic formula. Boom, I get it." And you're sat there like crying over these books because you like it's that. The
Mhm.
sorcerers are the annoying kids that can just do it, and the wizards are everybody else that have to, figure it out from books.
So with the sorcerers, their midichlorians are, like, off the scale?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Um,
Do you
if
like
we
what
look at
see, there's a Star
yes,
Trek one. Sweet,
I'm so proud of you, man. I'm
I
so proud.
listen, I pay attention.
Um, things like paladins, so where we look at Zenk, for example, or clerics, which are like honestly less. The paladins are the ones with the big swords and the armor, and the clerics are, the monks. They kind of they're a little bit less cool.
Mhm.
But they get their power through their devotion to a god. So
Okay.
it's kind of like drawn down. So if kind of, I guess, you like when the apostles like heal people
Mhm.
through that, they're kind of being like a cleric.
Yeah. So it's not your power, it is power
Hmm.
from somebody else specifically.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Um, and then to complicate things further, there's also a class called a warlock, which isn't shown in the film, but they basically kind of get into a contract with a higher being. So this can be a god. It can also usually be like an archfiend or a demon.
Okay.
So already we're beginning to see where there might be some contention, right?
Mhm.
And to make it a little bit more complicated, some classes lean more towards certain types of magic than others. So there are 7 different kinds of magic.
Okay.
So you have evocation magic,
Yep.
transmutation, illusion, conjuration, enchantment, divination, and necromancy.
Okay.
So again, some of those sound a little bit more evil than other ones, right?
Necromancy's the bad one, isn't it?
It's the bad one. Weirdly, there are some necromancy spells that you can use for good. So there's one called Gentle Repose, I believe, which basically you can imbue a corpse with kind of holy magic that stops it being raised,
Okay.
essentially. Again, so that they can be at peace. So
Nice.
some necromancy spells aren't bad. Most of them are like, I raise 10
Yeah.
corpses and then they do my bidding because it's necromancy. So we notice that Simon tends to do a lot of like illusion magic, so with the
Mhm.
fresh cut grass, and the fake Edgin at the gates,
I love that.
and abjuration, which is defensive magic, so the shields and the counter spells. Doric has sort of the powers of transmutation with the wild shapes.
Mhm.
Again, for the homies, I know mechanically that's not a spell, but for the illustration purposes,
She is a magic user, yeah.
she's a
I
magic user.
the bit where she gets hold of Safina at the end
Oh, with
and
the
just kind of
owlbear.
bashes her into the thing, that was straight out of Avengers Assemble, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know,
it was giving Hulk. It
that is
was
the
really
Hulk just smashing Loki around. I loved
go
it.
to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. Um, and Safina and the other Red Wizards of Thay are, of course, necromantic masters.
Mhm.
But we see her use plenty of evocation magic as well, which is the creation or manipulation of energy. So stuff like the meteor shower at the end, fire bolts, and the sick chain lightning that she pulls off at the Harper Stronghold. I mean, no, she's bad, evil, not sick chain lightning. So depending on the kind of magic user you are, might depend on the sort of magic that you use when you play the game. There's sort of theories that because Edgin is a bard, bards rely on their natural charisma to do things. So they are entertainers, they're singers, they're dancers, they're acrobats, they are the face of the party usually.
Mhm.
And a lot of their spells are verbal spells that don't really have an outward effect. So things like friends or charm person, which make other people more pliable to your kind of roles of persuasion. So there is a theory that Edgin is basically casting spells like all the time. We just can't see it
See
because
it.
it's not
Yeah.
like, a time stop that has a visual kind of component. So even just going through that, we can kind of see why some very conservative Christians might have an issue. If
Yeah.
you're inhabiting the role of characters who can conjure demons and spirits, they can speak to and control the dead, even resurrect people. It's not just a tablet of resurrection that can resurrect the dead. There are more than one. There are plenty of spells that can do that. There's even a spell of reincarnation, which is a very high level spell. So these are all elements that kind of harken to sort of semi-heretical, the diabolical, and the occult. And all of these are obviously condemned quite heavily in Bible scripture.
Yeah.
When you add in kind of supplements, so as well as the main rule books, you often get little kind of bonus books. So adventures that you can run or certain settings that you might want to place your game. So with things like the Book of Vile Darkness, which is exactly what you think it would be, which was released for third edition of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's also a magic item that you can have in fifth edition.
Okay.
You can see why some of the more, hardline Christians are quaking in their boots at it.
Can you?
So the biggest
Dr-
hang up
Mhm.
seems to kind of be in where the line is between playing pretend magic and really casting spells.
Okay.
And also where does pretending to be a sorcerer in the game make you want to become a real life witch and try and or wizard and try and cast spells for real in real life?
Okay.
So we're still on the gateway
So
drug
the idea is that
idea,
it's a gateway to the occult. Yeah.
gateway to the occult.
Okay.
Even to the point of, does imagining that you're conjuring a demon or role playing that you are in a pact with a demon make you more open to possession?
Okay. It,
Uh,
uh,
which I'm interested to hear your thoughts
you're
on this.
interested in my. So my frustration with this is how Christians have seemed to have made a virtue of having very little media literacy at all. I've been studying media studies since I was 14. So I understand how, for some people, these things might seem obvious, but might not seem obvious. But to me, I've been studying it for more than half my life. It seems incredibly
Mm.
obvious to me that when a film says it's about magic, it's not really about magic. I had a friend of mine who is incredibly intelligent, um, incredibly capable, and very well rounded, who was talking to me about how she went to see Wicked, and she was going to see it with her sister, and she was only really doing it for her sister because she wasn't really into that sort of thing. And I said, "Oh, really? Why's that?" And she said, "Well, because it's witchcraft and magic in it." I was like, and there was another person in the room sat next to us. Said, "Oh yeah, no, I can't be dealing with that." And it's like, it's the Wizard of Oz. It Wicked is a revisionist history interpretation of the Wizard of Oz story, where it's talking about how women and people of color are oppressed by straight white men in the world.
The
And
power of propaganda.
it has nothing to do with witchcraft whatsoever. I don't I think some people genuinely don't understand the concept of a plot device. You'll like this. In Buffy, one of the things that they would use, you would need to have some magic item to make whatever magic they
Mhm.
needed to happen in that
Yeah.
given episode. Either people are turning into into zombies because of a mask, or there's a love spell. And Joss Whedon's word for it, and I appreciate Joss Whedon, hella problematic, not here to defend him, but he did come up with a brilliant word, phlebotomy.
That is a good
Completely.
word. It sounds a bit like I'm gonna be headed to like a hospital though.
It could be. So the phlebotomy was whatever the magical device was that you needed to make the story happen. And similarly, when I hear magic is in a story or something, I don't genuinely believe that the film I'm watching is about magic in inverted commas because magic isn't real. It is something we use for stories. If you listen to actual self-confessed witches, they talk about casting spells and the rest of it, but so much of it just comes down to vibes, and the threefold rule and all that sort of stuff. So what I think it comes down to is when it comes to moral panics and people's problems with these, you're trying to make people feel scared because when they are scared, they are a bit more pliable.
Mm,
And when that happens, you are more likely to be able to recruit them for whatever your cause is going to be. And that cause is almost always about accruing more power for yourself,
mm,
effectively. We had a speaker, I won't say his name, I won't say what organization he was from, I won't even say where he was speaking, but he was talking about one particular thing that he was concerned about recently. And he said, and what I want you all to do is I want you all to sign up so that when I go into Westminster, I've got all these names of all these people who agree with me on this thing and want to back it up. And that's how I feel about this kind of thing, that
yeah.
someone's trying to accrue political power for themselves, and by making you scared of a thing,
Mm.
they get to do that.
The other thing I'm really intrigued in getting your side on is the as well as demons and magic, the other thing that D&D has that some Christians again take issue with is other gods,
Yeah.
right? So the Pantheon in Faerun alone contains 38 different gods.
So
And some of them are good, you know, they're gods of courage and justice. Some of them are neutral, so they're kind of gods of just like craft or commerce. And some of them are straight up evil.
yeah.
You've got gods of, you know, murder and misfortune and such. And that's before you get into the species specific deities. So you've got like Garl Glittergold, who is the patron deity of gnomes. We love him. And the Grunsh, the Orcish god of war, all kinds of things. And if we're going to look at the Bible, we can look at Corinthians, where Paul explains that basically any other deity that's not God is a demon masquerading as a deity, right? So in 1 Corinthians 10:20, he says, the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to God. So by that, if we go from that Bible verse, these gods were then back to demons and worshipping of demons, and that's bad. But the other way, the other area we could end up in is idolatry, right?
Yeah.
I would love to get a take on what does idolatry kind of look like in a modern sense, because to me that seems like a really oldie-timey Christian issue.
Hmm.
Obviously, in the main idolatry story is the one from the Old Testament with Moses and Aaron. So Moses heads up the mountain to hang out with God and hash out some tablets and stuff, and he's gone for a really, really long time. And Aaron and the others are like, "Where's Moses? Like, what? We don't know when he's coming back.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll give me your jewelry. We'll make this golden calf, and like that's gonna be our god. Let's go." So then, when Moses comes back down from the mountain after having basically persuaded God not to smite all these people,
Hmm.
he gets down there and then he gets really mad. Basically says, if you're with me, stay with me.
Hmm.
And those people who aren't with me, you should probably go kill them. And it gets really messy really quickly. But the bottom line of that story being that, you know, worshipping false gods is bad.
Yeah.
Paul again in Corinthians has been the MVP for for this episode. Corinthians says, "Do not be idolaters." He also says, "Flee from idolatry."
Hmm.
So the idea that worshipping false gods, and again from this perspective, pretending to worship gods that aren't God, may fall into idolatry. But in a modern sense, what does that actually look like?
That's an amazing question. I'm going to try and take that out a little bit and see if I can take the bit as well. So, first of all, I don't worry about gods in Dungeons and Dragons because they're not real. And I don't know what to tell you guys.
How dare
Not,
you say
not,
that Garl Glittergold, patron deity of gnomes, is not real?
and okay, this might show my
I believe in him.
this might show my arrogance as a a theist or what I believe in. So for me, when I have doubts, my doubts are: is there a God or not? Is there an afterlife or not? That's those are the big ones. My doubts are never, am I worshipping the wrong God? I've
Right?
never there going, what if the Hindus have got it right all along? What if it's Islam that's the place to be? But it's completely arrogant. It is completely self-serving. It reflects my ignorance of these other religions, but I am inexorably drawn to a itinerant preacher from the first century who said the greatest command is to love your God and the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. Because honestly, if we did those two things, we'd be golden. We'd be absolutely fine. So for me, other gods, I don't sweat them. It's like I'm
Mm.
not worrying what Zeus is doing right now. I'm not
Like,
worrying
you've
what.
never felt, like, lost enough that you've gone to find, like, your nearest, like, park sculpture and be like, "That's my god now." Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. No, never
In
bothered me.
Birmingham, we've got, like, bulls everywhere, like, a
Yeah.
million bull statues. You walk anywhere, there's a bull statue. I've personally never felt compelled to pray to any of them.
So there are people who talk in terms of like the spiritual warfare
Mhm.
aspect and talking about how, yes, when you are worshipping a false god, you could be worshipping a demon. I came from a very evangelical background, which was very heavily emphasized that warfare aspect to it.
Mm.
I would say these days, it's not that I don't believe that aspect of Christianity, it's that I put less emphasis on it. I don't think somebody is afflicted by demons if they've got mental health problems or if they've got
Yeah.
depression. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, as I talked about with Tim Hillier in the Exorcist episode, I do believe that there is a spiritual warfare aspect to it. I do believe there
Mhm.
are demons. I believe the times when people are actually giving credit for demons doing things and is like this big, quite big, and yet times when demons are actually doing a thing is this big.
Like,
I
tiny.
think
Yeah.
human beings can screw things up on their own.
Mhm.
Coming to the topic of idols, there are what you could call sort of people who are idols. So, for example, growing up as a teenager, learning about Revelation and the Antichrist and all the rest of it, the idea that there would be a leader who would come along who was doing bad and evil things, but yet at the same time was really popular seemed so confusing to me.
So crazy.
How
I
could somebody get that kind of popularity if they're so demonstrably evil? They must be really good at hiding it. And then 2016 comes along, you're like, oh, okay.
I get it.
So there are people out there who absolutely idolize Donald Trump. There are people out there who absolutely idolize Charlie Kirk.
Mhm.
And the way you can tell that somebody's being idolized is if you say to the people who are idolizing them, okay, well, what is the thing that they could do wrong that would make you change your mind about them? And if they can't think of anything, or if they can literally ignore the facts that are plain to see right in front of them,
Yeah.
then that person's become an idol to them, and you've basically got a cult effectively.
Mhm.
It's been amazing. We're just I think a week and a half out at the time of recording from the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the way Christians who I know and respect get quite tied up when you
Yeah.
quote Charlie Kirk verbatim
Mhm. Mhm.
and they say, well, he was a child of God who was beloved. It's like, yes, that's true. And you can say that for literally every person ever. They're all children of God. Mussolini was a child of God. Fred Rose West, child of God. Those are extreme examples, but they
Mhm.
they they prove my point. So
Yeah.
those are situations where you can get idols
Yeah.
as a person, and
Mhm.
they can accrue spiritual power, they can accrue political power, and that's bad, and we don't want those.
Yeah.
On a more personal level, for me, it's less about a person being an idol, and it can be more about a thing being an idol. And I'm a pretty passionate person. I can get really invested and really involved in things, and I can get absolutely go down a rabbit hole with stuff.
This podcast is only supposed to be like 4 episodes, guys.
Yeah. Well,
It's supposed to be a one and done. Like,
it actually brings up to my point here. What has developed over the years for me is there's like a little bit of a circuit breaker in my head. So, for example, first time I became conscious of it was I was spending way too long thinking about Doctor Who. Okay, so you think about it, you think about the stories and the way it's done, and you think of the parallels, the way how for us at the time, I was the Doctor and like Natalie was my Rose, and then she goes off to China, and then Rose is in an alternate dimension, and you know people who work on the production, and you spend time thinking about it, and you dress yourself accordingly. You try to get things, you paint flipping doors in your house to look like the TARDIS and stuff like that. And there will be a moment somewhere in that process where I'll go, Giles, dude, I think you need to take a step back from this.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. Because if there is so much Doctor Who in my mind and in my heart, then there's no room left for God.
Yeah.
And one of the best things about this podcast has been that I can fall down a rabbit hole, study something intently, we record it, I edit it to within an inch of its life, put it out into the world, and then I can kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
It's like I've taken all my thoughts, sucked them out, stuck them in a pensieve, and just left them over there. And it's that process with Bruce Springsteen and My Chemical Romance and Taylor Swift. I have this. One of the good things about the show is it gives me the chance to obsess over a thing, and then there's a natural stopping point for obsessing over the thing. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. So it's less about finding a new god in place of an old one, but rather putting things on too high a pedestals in a modern sense,
Yeah.
and
And
it
that's what
taking up too much of your brain power and your time, rather than you're anxious that God doesn't exist anymore, and you're like,
absolutely.
heck it, we roll with Juno now. Hey, like,
Yeah.
like,
Now, the examples I've given you are quite trivial there, Springsteen, music, film, TV. Oh, Star Trek. Oh, flipping heck, Star Trek. I could tell you exactly which position I'd be in my ideal rank and what ship I want to send. We don't have time. We do not have time to get onto that.
what are you wearing? Duck denim or like chai, or
Chai
like
Tea, Lieutenant Commander Goff, serving on the USS Defiant during the Dominion War. We don't have time. We don't have time for this, Julia. Okay? The worst thing, the trickier thing is what I'm going to call noble idols. Things where they can easily displace God in your life and nobody would blame you.
Mhm.
So a relationship can do that. In the past, when I've been in a relationship with a non-Christian, you know that you are choosing that person over God. And it's like becomes like this ceiling between you and God where you kind of you feel like you can't quite get over it and he can't come under it. And that's completely put on. So I had to find someone to marry who had the same relationship with God as I did.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect to it. Another aspect that they say, and I've noticed it myself, is one of the things that can really get in the way of your relationship with God is doing works for God. You can get so into this is my job, or this is my role, or this is my calling, my ministry. You forget to actually check in with him and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, what's up?" You know. So those are aspects of how idolatry can manifest in the subtle and the not so subtle ways. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, because I think for a lot of us non-Christians, when we think of idols, we kind of have that vague memory of the golden calf
Hmm.
episode of the Bible, and it all seems very, very dated and very, I hesitate to use the word silly, but like there's no
Yeah.
way that that's going to be a common problem now, because the Christian faith is so established in our culture. So hearing it broken down like that is interesting, because I have always wondered, what does idolatry look like in
Yeah.
a modern perspective?
So it's not really about what you're idolizing. It is the process of diverting your
Hmm.
attention away from
Yeah.
God. and away from Jesus.
So to conclude, I think we're both pretty much in agreement that the idea that D&D means that you're casting spells and summoning demons and it is nonsense. For me, the rhetoric really hinges on this idea that players can't differentiate between reality and fantasy, a bit like how you've been explaining with the media literacy and what is a plot device and what is not a plot device.
Okay, are you ready for some media lessons?
Yeah, man, hit me.
All right, cool. So, one of the most old-fashioned media theories was the uses and gratifications model,
Mhm.
and it was when sort of TV and radio were quite new, and you have all this new technology coming into the world around about the same time as that Hitler fella seems to be doing
That
really well.
guy.
So you're saying to yourself, well, hang on, why is this guy able to seduce an entire nation into doing what he wants when he's clearly demonstrably a wrong un? So they believed that media was like a hypodermic needle. You took all the messages that were in there and you just injected it and you're like, eat it up and believe everything that you
Yeah.
see, okay? Then later on, there is what's called the uses and gratifications model of media consumption. And what that means is different people can look at the same text and come up with wildly different interpretations. And the example I always give is somebody can watch The Matrix and go, oh, guns are cool. And I can watch The Matrix and go, oh, that coat is so cool.
Yeah.
And what
Some of us watch
you
The Matrix and go, Trinity is so cool.
and
Trinity, man.
that kind of hypodermic needle approach
Mm.
is the same thing that gets brought out after every moral panic ever. When Jamie Bulger was killed back in 93
Hmm.
by, I cannot remember the names of the killers, and frankly, I don't want to.
Yeah.
They had been seen to be watching Child's Play 3, so it was easier to blame Child's Play 3.
Yes. Yeah.
When Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the two killers' names I can remember, shot up Columbine High School in 1999. People blamed Marilyn Manson and they blamed violent video games. And every time it's a way of avoiding the actual issue
Yeah.
that you need tighter gun control or you need to pay attention to what your kids are doing
Hmm.
or
Yeah. It
it's
was exactly the same with James Dallas Egbert and James Pulling with D&D. Dallas Egbert was severely depressed,
yeah.
and eventually when he took his own life, that was blamed on D&D and completely not related to the fact apparently that he was also really struggling with his sexuality and he just moved to uni and a bunch of other stuff that you do when you are 18. But
Yeah.
write a book about how D&D is bad, William Deere.
Well,
Like,
it gets clicks,
mm,
it sells
yeah.
newspapers, and people jump on a bandwagon quite easily. And I think if we really sat down and looked and said, what is D&D really? It's just a bunch of nerds vibing with each other.
Yeah, I saw one article that described it as part make-believe, part math, part board game, and that I think is my my favorite one. But yeah, this idea that by pretending to be these characters, you can't really differentiate. When honestly, anytime I cast a spell, I sit there and I go, I cast Leonelman's tiny hut, and then I roll a dice sometimes, and then sometimes we yell at it because it's not the number that we wanted, right? But what this idea really doesn't take into account with D&D is that it's infinitely changeable. Players are encouraged to change or even remove rules they don't like, create new settings, even make new kinds of species and classes. And these non-official rules are what we call homebrew, and they basically make up the backbone of the game outside of official rulebooks. So if you don't like a pantheon of gods, throw them out. If you don't like demons, make them the villains of your story. So very much like Doom, surely there's nothing more Christian than killing demons in a lot of flashy ways, right? I did a little Google to sort of see what might Christian D&D kind of look like, and there were loads of articles and resources explaining how you can do this. So one article from a website called Roll for Joy suggested dropping your players directly into the Bible itself. So, quote, one of my favorite stories to play out is the Skever from Acts 19. a bunch of stuffed shirts getting in over their heads and getting possessed. Have the PCs just happen to be in Ephesus while that's going on, and then play that out. What do they do with the possessed folks?
Hang on, sorry. It's pronounced Ephesus.
Ephesus, sorry.
Yeah,
My
I was like
bad.
Ephesus. Who's
Ephesus.
in?
Look, man.
Who's in Ephesus?
But basically, I briefly read up on Acts 19, but yeah, it's a bunch of possessed people in a city, and some people who are like they're really trying to be good Jesus followers, and they're like, yeah, we'll help, we'll cast out these demons, and they're not really qualified, and it doesn't really go very well. Another source I found, which I loved, was a document from a guy called Reverend Rory Filstrom. And it was basically a document providing Bible quotes for all the spells in Dungeons and Dragons that have verbal components, so magic words to cast them. So
I love that.
for Fina uses at the final battle in Neverwinter, it's kind of that big, kind of muscly hand with the nails. That's a Bigby's hand. I think Simon is also using a Bigby's hand. He might be using another spell, but Bigby's hand. For that particular spell, Reverend Filstrom suggests Jeremiah verse 21:5, which is, "This is what the Lord God says: I will fight you in anger, fury, and rage with my powerful hand and my mighty arm."
I love that.
It was honestly, it was really cool to flick through. But if you don't really feel like going all in on the Bible content, loads of articles talked about using elements like non-player characters, so characters controlled by the game master, or story hooks that reflect some of the core messages of the Bible, like the call for service, self-sacrifice, faith over fear, redemption, and mercy. So in short, D&D really is only what you make it. And if you're unable to separate your hobby from your faith, then why not just kind of smush them together instead? Although within reason, because we don't want to get idolatrous, you can make your hobby part of your faith as well.
Fantastic. That was brilliant, Julie. You did an amazing job,
That was really
as
fun.
always.
We have a review. You are going to like this one. You're going to like this one. So our Springsteen episode just dropped last Friday, and my friend Lawrence Bransby, he's a travel writer. He does these amazing books about all his like journeys on the motorcycle. He's like traveled across Russia, and he's like motorcycled up from like South Africa to Britain and stuff like that. How can I put it? He's the person you want to be if you retire, but you kind of know deep in your heart of hearts you're never going to be that cool.
Yeah.
When I'm a 70-something granddad, I'm probably not going to be dirt biking anywhere, frankly. But anyway.
Very long way down.
Yeah. Anyway, this is his review. There were many things I liked about this. Giles' enthusiasm for his subject, in this case both Springsteen and film in general, are contagious. One cannot but help feel the buzz of excitement throughout. His knowledge of the topic also impresses. Listening to him talk makes it clear that this is someone who knows his oats. Also, I love the way Giles' strong Christian faith is expressed without apology. It's taken as a given, and without being pushy. Both presenters treated their respective belief/non-belief with acceptance and respect. It was just there, and one never felt there was an elephant hiding in the corner just waiting to trumpet. A most impressive podcast, and one I found absorbing throughout. How great is that?
That's so nice.
That's so lovely.
That's very sweet.
And for a little bit of editorial balance, we got some very negative comments on YouTube as well, And
oh my god!
I thought there's a twisted part of you that might quite like hearing what our haters have to say.
Honestly, kind of. I want, like, what are the haters saying? Like,
this one from Raptus Julius on YouTube. Hello. May you come to know the gospel and repent. Your views are opposed to God's. And then we have a little bit of for God so loved the world. Well, actually, he just says for God so loved ... He's throwing in Bible verses. And I was like, hi there, what in this episode makes you think we need to repent? And he said, hi, you said several times it was okay not to believe and that people who don't believe are not evil. You seem to show much understanding for those who reject God and treat it as if it didn't mean hell to reject repentance for them. Also, what you said about Trump leads me to suppose you are more of a liberal and tolerant person, which again clearly opposes
no. He pulled out the liberal slur. That oh wow. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Raptus Julia.
just so we're clear, Julia, you're evil and you're going to hell, by the way, and that's very clear.
I'm going to have a great time down there with other people who are down there.
Yeah, but the thing I find that's quite sweet about this, it's actually quite romantic, is that he's clearly listened to the whole episode, or at least enough of the episode at the point
a good chunk.
where we start slagging off Donald Trump, and we're going to keep doing that. We're not going to apologise for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you have been, thank you so much for listening. Please join us in a few weeks' time for our Christmas special, which is going to be on Home Alone.
Ooh, exciting.
I think you're going to really enjoy that.
Juliet, you did an amazing job hosting this one. Smashed it as per usual.
I think I'm ready to let you do all the stuff now. I'm tired, man. I'm tired.
You can have a nice long lie down, and
Julia, have you had a good time?
I've had an amazing time, as always.
Yeah, me too. All right, guys. See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. God in Film is hosted and created by Giles Goff.
That's me.
But this one was me, Julia Hall. Mixing and editing by Giles. Our logo was designed by
Julie Walsh.
And our theme tune was composed by
Rick Lee.
Waffle editing by
Natalie Miniker.
Please rate and review.
Please give us 5 stars because that's a nice thing to do.